Tomas Chen was having lunch when the world exploded. He was sitting at an outdoor cafe in the Meridian district of Vaynar's capital city, eating something the locals called sunbread, and watching the afternoon crowds, when the first explosion tore through the air 6 blocks away. The shockwave rattled windows and sent people screaming in all directions. Years of emergency response training overrode Tomas's survival instincts. While civilians fled away from the blast, he grabbed his medical kit from under the table and ran toward it. The kit went everywhere with him, a habit from his work with interstellar aid response. He'd been on Vaynar for 3 months as part of a humanitarian exchange program, working in the public hospitals and learning about Vaynar medical practices. The city had seemed peaceful, sophisticated, far from the disaster zones where he usually deployed. That assessment had just been proven catastrophically wrong. The scene of the explosion was chaos. The blast had targeted a royal procession. That much was immediately obvious from the ornate vehicles now twisted and burning. Royal guards were trying to secure the area, establish a perimeter, but there were wounded everywhere and more explosions in the distance suggested this was a coordinated attack. Tomas's mind shifted into the calm focus that came from years of emergency medicine. Triage, assess, prioritize, save who you can. He moved through the wreckage, identifying injuries, marking critical cases for the emergency services he could hear approaching. Then he saw the overturned armored transport and the small figure trapped inside. The vehicle was on its side, smoke pouring from the engine compartment, and there was a child pinned in the wreckage. Tomas could see her through the shattered window, could see the blood and the way she wasn't moving, and the formal clothing that marked her as someone important, probably royal family given this was their procession. He didn't think about protocol or politics, or the fact that getting into that unstable vehicle was monumentally stupid. He saw a child who would die without help. The transport's door was jammed, but the window was large enough. Tomas broke away the remaining glass and squeezed through, his medical kit clutched in one hand. Inside, the smoke was thicker, making him cough. The child, a Vaynar girl with those distinctive long ears and delicate features, was trapped under a collapsed seat. She was conscious, barely, her dark eyes wide with terror and pain. Hey, I've got you," Tomas said, falling automatically into the calm, reassuring tone he used with frightened patience. "I'm a doctor, well, a medic, and I'm going to get you out of here. Can you tell me your name?" "Ayana," the girl whispered, her voice thin with pain. Her formal attire, now torn and soaked with blood, had markings that Tomas's crash course in Vaynar culture recognized as royal insignia. Princess. This was a princess. The weight of that realization hit him, then he shoved it aside. Didn't matter who she was. She was a patient who needed help immediately. "Okay, Ayana, I need you to stay very still while I check your injuries. This is going to hurt, and I'm sorry about that, but I need to know how badly you're hurt." He worked quickly, his hands steady despite the adrenaline and fear. Compound fracture of the left leg, probable internal bleeding. Puncture wound in her side that was the source of most of the blood. Head trauma, severity unclear. She needed a hospital immediately, but moving her wrong could kill her just as surely as leaving her here. Tomas made quick decisions, applying pressure to the worst bleeding, stabilizing the leg fracture with materials from his kit, carefully supporting her neck in case of spinal injury. The transport shifted suddenly, metal groaning, and Tomas realized the vehicle was going to collapse further. He made a choice born from instinct and training, using his own body to create a protective barrier over Ayana, bracing himself against the frame to take the impact if the roof came down. Outside, he could hear shouts, royal guards reaching the transport, but everything had narrowed to this moment and this patient and keeping her alive. The roof did come down, not completely, but enough that debris rained on Tomas's back. He felt something impact his shoulder, pain flaring bright, but he held position, protecting Ayana with his body until strong hands pulled them both from the wreckage. The royal guards had reached them, professional soldiers who handled both Tomas and the princess with careful efficiency. One of them, a stern woman with commander's insignia, looked at Tomas with an expression that combined respect, confusion, and suspicion. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Tomas Chen, Interstellar Aid Response Medical Technician," Tomas said automatically, his attention still on Iana. "She needs immediate surgery, probable internal bleeding, and that head trauma needs imaging right now." The commander issued rapid orders, and suddenly they were moving, Tomas being carried along because he wouldn't let go of his patient, maintaining pressure on her wounds, even as his own injuries made his vision blur. They reached an emergency transport, armored and fast, and Tomas found himself inside with Iana and a squad of grim-faced guards. Across from him was a woman who made everyone else in the vehicle seem insignificant by comparison. She was tall, elegant despite obvious injuries, with blood on her formal robes and an expression of such controlled devastation that Tomas's heart ached just looking at her. This was Queen Sareth. Tomas had seen her in news broadcasts, always composed and regal. Now she looked like someone whose world had just ended, but who was forcing herself to keep functioning through sheer will. Her eyes locked on Iana, on Tomas's bloody hands still working to keep the princess alive, and something cracked in her careful composure. "Is she?" The queen's voice broke. "Will she?" "She'll make it," Tomas said with more confidence than he felt. "I've stabilized her. She needs surgery, but she'll make it." "You're hurt," Queen Sareth said, her eyes moving to Tomas's shoulder where blood was soaking through his shirt. "You're injured and you're still. Why are you still?" "Because she's my patient," Tomas said simply. "I don't stop until someone else can take over, until she's safe." The queen's expression shifted into something Tomas was too exhausted and in too much pain to interpret. She reached out and touched his hand briefly, a gesture that felt profoundly significant though he didn't understand why. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For my daughter, thank you." Then Tomas's injuries and adrenaline crash caught up with him, and the world went dark. His last conscious thought was hoping he'd done enough, that the princess would survive, that his choice to run toward danger instead of away had actually mattered. Consciousness returned slowly, accompanied by pain and confusion and the distinctive smell of medical facilities. Tomas opened his eyes to find himself in a room that was very much not a standard hospital. The ceiling was ornate, decorated with patterns that probably had historical significance. The bed was too comfortable, the equipment too advanced, and when he turned his head, he saw a guard stationed at the door. Not a medical orderly. An armed royal guard. "Where am I?" Tomas asked, his voice rough. The guard straightened. "The royal palace, sir. Queen's orders. You've been unconscious for 3 days. Your injuries were significant but not life-threatening. Princess Iana." The question came out urgently. "She survived," the guard said, and something like approval flickered in his expression. "Thanks to you. She's recovering in the children's medical wing. The queen has visited her daily." Relief flooded through Tomas so strongly he felt dizzy. She made it. The kid actually made it. Over the next hour, medical staff checked his condition, changed dressings on his shoulder injury, and informed him that he'd sustained a fractured collarbone, significant bruising, and minor burns in addition to various cuts and contusions. He'd heal completely with time and rest. What they didn't tell him, what he discovered when he tried to leave, was that he couldn't. "I understand you want to return to your quarters, Mr. Chen," the doctor said carefully, "but you've been designated a protected individual by royal decree. You cannot leave the palace. For your own safety." That's when Tomas learned the full extent of what had happened during the attack. The explosion he'd responded to was part of a coordinated strike targeting the royal family. The king was dead. The crown prince was dead. 2 other royal children were dead. Queen Sareth had survived with injuries. And Princess Iana, the youngest daughter, was now the sole heir to the Vaynar throne, alive only because a human EMT had pulled her from a burning vehicle. The political situation was volatile. Multiple groups had claimed responsibility for the attack. Other factions were trying to exploit the instability. Anyone connected to Princess Iana's survival was considered a potential target for those who wanted to eliminate the royal bloodline entirely. Hence the palace, the guards, the polite but absolute prohibition on leaving. Tomas was processing this information when Queen Sareth herself arrived at his medical room. She looked different from the devastated woman in the emergency transport. Now she was composed, regal, every inch the monarch despite the visible signs of grief around her eyes. Her formal robes were elegant, hiding the bandages Tomas knew must be underneath. Her distinctive long ears, marking her as Vaynar royalty, were adorned with formal jewelry. But her expression, when she looked at him, held genuine warmth beneath the formal facade. "Mr. Chen," she said, inclining her head in a gesture that felt significant though Tomas didn't understand the protocol. "I owe you a debt beyond my ability to repay. You saved my daughter's life when you could have fled to safety." "Your Majesty," Tomas started, trying to sit up straighter and immediately regretting it as pain flared in his shoulder. "I'm glad I could help, but I really need to get back to my work. My organization will be worried and I have commitments." "That won't be possible," Queen Sareth said gently but with absolute finality. "By ancient Vaynar law, anyone who saves the life of a royal heir becomes part of the royal household. It is an old tradition, designed to honor and protect those who demonstrate extraordinary loyalty to the crown." She paused, and her carefully controlled expression softened slightly. "You risked your life for my daughter, Mr. Chen. You protected her with your own body when the transport collapsed. You gave me the only family I have left. By our laws and my authority as queen, you are now part of our royal household. You belong to us." Tomas stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "Your Majesty, I appreciate the honor truly, but I have a life, a career. I'm here on a temporary exchange program. I can't just, I didn't save Princess Iana expecting any reward. I did it because she needed help." "I know," Sareth said, and something that might have been sadness flickered across her face. "That is precisely why you deserve this recognition and protection. But understand, Mr. Chen, this is not simply a gesture of gratitude. You are now legally and officially part of the royal family, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. And for your safety and ours, you cannot leave the palace." She stepped closer, and Tomas saw the grief she was carrying barely concealed beneath her regal composure. "My daughter is alive because of you. She is all I have left of my family. I will not risk anyone harming the person who saved her. I will not permit you to return to a life where you could be targeted by those who wish harm to my bloodline. You belong to us now, Tomas Chen, whether you are ready or not." It wasn't a request. It was a declaration from a queen who had lost nearly everything and was protecting what remained with every resource at her command. Tomas opened his mouth to argue, then saw the steel beneath Sareth's composed exterior and realized argument would be futile. He'd run toward danger to save a princess, and that choice had bound him to a royal family in ways he was only beginning to understand. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "I don't know the first thing about being part of a royal household. I'm a medic. I work emergency response. I don't know protocol or proper behavior or any of this." "Then you will learn," Sareth said. "I have assigned staff to help you adjust. You will have quarters in the royal wing, appropriate clothing, tutors in court etiquette and our language." She paused. "I understand this is overwhelming, Mr. Chen, but you gave me a reason to continue ruling when I wanted nothing more than to collapse from grief. My daughter lives because you acted with courage and compassion. That matters more than any amount of protocol training. We will teach you what you need to know. For now, simply accept that you are under our protection and part of our family." "That is not negotiable." She turned to leave, then looked back at him one more time. "Iana has been asking for you. When you're recovered enough to move about, I hope you'll visit her." She remembers the man who told her everything would be okay when she was trapped and terrified. I think seeing you would help her healing, both physical and emotional. Of course, Tomas said immediately. I'd like to see her too. Make sure she's recovering properly. Sareth smiled then, genuine and warm beneath the grief. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for everything. And she was gone, leaving Tomas alone with a guard and the realization that his life had just been completely upended by one impulsive choice to run toward danger instead of away. He was part of a royal family now, an alien royal family, on a planet that wasn't his home, and apparently he had no choice in the matter. This was going to be complicated. Adjusting to palace life was every bit as difficult as Tomas had anticipated. His quarters were absurdly luxurious, far beyond anything he'd ever experienced. He had staff whose job was apparently to help him dress, arrange his schedule, and teach him proper protocol. He had tutors who tried patiently to explain the complex social hierarchies of Vaynar court, the proper forms of address for different ranks, the elaborate etiquette governing every interaction. Tomas was terrible at all of it. He used informal language when he should be formal. He bowed at completely wrong moments. He forgot people's titles consistently. The palace staff didn't know what to make of him, this human who'd saved the princess but clearly had no business being anywhere near nobility. His protocol tutor, a stern elderly Vaynar named Master Korvax, looked perpetually pained by Tomas's mistakes. You cannot address a duke as you would a merchant, Korvax explained for the 5th time. The formal construction requires. I'm an EMT, not a diplomat, Tomas interrupted. If someone's bleeding out in front of me, I'm not going to worry about using the correct formal verb conjugation. Master Korvax looked like he wanted to cry. But despite his struggles with protocol, Tomas found ways to be useful. The palace medical staff welcomed his input on emergency procedures. The royal guard was interested in his teaching about triage and field medicine. And most importantly, Princess Iana wanted to see him every day. Their first reunion happened a week after Tomas was released from his own medical care. He was escorted to the children's wing of the palace, nervous about seeing the girl he'd pulled from the wreckage. Would she remember him? Would seeing him trigger trauma from the attack? He needn't have worried. The moment Iana saw him, her face lit up with recognition and relief. Uncle Tomas. She called out, using the informal term of affection before anyone could correct her. You came. Uncle. Tomas looked at the attendant who'd brought him, confused. She's been calling you that since she woke up, the attendant explained with a slight smile. We've tried to explain proper forms of address, but Her Highness is quite insistent. Iana reached for him, and Tomas moved to her bedside, his medical training automatically assessing her condition even as he smiled. Hey there, princess. How are you feeling? You saved me, Iana said simply. You told me everything would be okay, and you stayed with me even when things were scary. Mother says you're part of our family now. Does that mean you're really my uncle? Something in Tomas's chest tightened. If that's what you'd like to call me, sure. Though I'm probably more like a really concerned friend who happens to live in the same house now. Uncle Tomas, Iana said firmly. Because you're family. Mother said so. From that day forward, Tomas visited Iana daily. He checked her medical progress with professional thoroughness, but mostly he just spent time with her. They talked about Earth, about her life before the attack, about nothing in particular. Iana was traumatized, struggling with nightmares and grief for her father and siblings, but she seemed to find comfort in Tomas's presence. He was a point of stability from the worst moment of her life, someone who'd promised she'd be okay and had kept that promise. Queen Sareth noticed. She began appearing during Tomas's visits, ostensibly to check on her daughter, but really, Tomas suspected, to observe how they interacted. She watched him with Iana, saw the gentleness and genuine care he showed, and something in her careful royal composure would soften. After one visit, when Iana had finally fallen asleep after a nightmare-interrupted night, Sareth walked with Tomas through the palace gardens. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for being so patient with her. She's been through so much, and she paused, you make her feel safe. That matters more than any amount of proper protocol. I'm glad I can help," Tomas said honestly. "She's a good kid, strong. She'll get through this." Sareth was silent for a moment. "It's strange," she said finally. "I've known you for only a few weeks, and yet you've become essential to my daughter's recovery. To my own ability to function, if I'm honest. When I see you with Iana, when I see her smile again, it reminds me that not everything was lost in that attack, that there is still goodness in the world." Tomas didn't know how to respond to that, so he fell back on humor. "Well, I'm mostly useful for keeping people alive and making terrible jokes at inappropriate moments. But I'm glad it helps." They walked further into the gardens, away from the formality of the palace. Sareth seemed to relax slightly, the queen facade dropping just a bit. "Tell me about your family," she said. "On Earth, do you have people who are worried about you?" Tomas thought about his family, his parents in New Singapore, his sister in the asteroid belt working cargo ships. "Yeah, I have people. I sent messages letting them know I'm okay, but I haven't explained the whole suddenly part of a royal family thing yet. Not sure how to explain that in a way that doesn't sound insane." Sareth smiled slightly. "I imagine it does sound insane from an outside perspective. You came here as a medical worker and ended up legally adopted into an alien royal household. Not exactly a common career trajectory. Definitely not in the brochure," Tomas agreed. "But I've had stranger assignments. Once spent 3 months on a mining station where the gravity kept failing at random intervals. This is weird in different ways, but at least the gravity is consistent." That actually made Sareth laugh, quick and genuine. "I think that's the first time I've laughed since," she stopped, her expression closing down. "Since the attack. Thank you for that." They talked more as they walked, Sareth asking about his life, his choice to work humanitarian response, his experiences across different systems. Tomas learned about her life in return. Groomed from childhood to be queen consort, married young to the crown prince in a political alliance that had, she said softly, grown into genuine love. Her late husband had been kind, intelligent, a good father. She missed him with an ache that was visible in every careful word. And now she was ruling alone, holding a shattered nation together, raising a traumatized daughter, and trying to be strong when what she really wanted was to collapse from grief. "I shouldn't be telling you all of this," she said suddenly, as if realizing how much she'd revealed. "You're part of the household, but we barely know each other. This is completely inappropriate." "Maybe," Tomas said. "But sometimes the most helpful thing is just having someone listen, who isn't expecting you to be anything other than human." "Well, Vaynar, you know what I mean. Someone who sees you as a person instead of just a queen." Sareth stopped walking and looked at him directly, her dark eyes intense. "You're very perceptive, Mr. Chen, and very kind. Those aren't common qualities at court." They continued walking, and Tomas found himself looking forward to these conversations. Sareth was brilliant when discussing policy, fiercely protective when talking about Iana, and unexpectedly funny when she let her guard down. Over the following weeks, their relationship shifted from formal acknowledgement to something closer to genuine friendship. Tomas noticed when Sareth was pushing herself too hard, when state business was grinding her down. He started finding excuses to interrupt her schedule, appearing with food when she'd forgotten to eat, suggesting she join him and Iana for informal evening activities. Sareth began to rely on these interventions, these moments when someone gave her permission to be something other than an unbreakable monarch. And slowly, carefully, something deeper began developing between them, though neither was quite ready to acknowledge what it was. 3 months after the attack, Tomas had settled into an uncomfortable routine. He'd given up trying to master all the intricacies of court protocol, and instead focused on being useful in ways that actually matched his skills. He worked with the palace medical staff, taught emergency response techniques to the guard, and spent significant time with Princess Iana, who continued to call him Uncle Tomas despite Master Korvax's protests about proper forms of address. Queen Sareth had proven to be a formidable leader, holding the consortium together through intelligence, determination, and careful political maneuvering. But Tomas, who spent more time with her than most of the court, saw what it cost her. The late nights reviewing security reports. The nightmares that left her exhausted despite the healing of her physical injuries. The way her hands would shake slightly before she forced them still. He started paying closer attention, noting when she skipped meals, when exhaustion made her decisions less sharp, when the weight of ruling while grieving threatened to overwhelm her. He began small interventions, bringing food with plausible excuses, suggesting evening walks in the garden for security route familiarization, creating reasons for her to step away from being queen for brief intervals. Sareth noticed what he was doing and was quietly, profoundly grateful. "You've become essential to my functioning," she told him one evening in the garden, their regular retreat from palace formality. "I don't know how I managed before you were here. You probably managed the same way," Tomas said. "By being stubborn and refusing to admit you need help. I just gave you an excuse to accept it." They'd grown comfortable with each other, their conversations ranging from serious policy discussions to comfortable silence. Tomas found himself watching for Sareth during the day, looking forward to their evening walks, thinking about her more than was probably appropriate given their respective positions. The shift from friendship to something deeper happened during a security incident. Nothing like the original attack, just a breach in the palace perimeter that was quickly contained, but it triggered Sareth's trauma. Tomas was called by worried staff to find her in her private quarters, struggling through a panic attack, the composed queen facade completely shattered. He didn't hesitate. Moved to her side, spoke in the calm, grounding voice he used with trauma patients, helped her work through the panic with breathing exercises and steady presence. He didn't treat her like a queen in that moment, just like someone who needed help. When she finally calmed, Sareth looked at him with raw vulnerability. "I can't do this alone," she admitted, tears still on her face. "Everyone expects me to be unbreakable, but I'm not. I'm terrified every moment that I'll fail Iana, fail my people, fail everyone who depends on me. And I'm so tired of being strong." "You don't have to be strong all the time," Tomas said gently, still holding her hand. "That's what having people around you means. Someone else can be strong when you can't. Let me help. Let someone be here for you, not just for the queen but for you." Sareth pulled him close then, desperate and seeking comfort, and the kiss that followed was inevitable. It was born from trauma and need and genuine affection, a connection neither had planned but both desperately wanted. They pulled apart after a moment, both breathing hard, both aware they just crossed a significant line. "This is inappropriate," Sareth whispered, though she hadn't let go of him. "You're part of my household, I'm your queen, you're grieving. This is what we both need," Tomas finished, "if you want it. If this is something you actually want and not just." "I want it," Sareth said firmly. "I want you. Not because I'm grateful or because you saved Iana, though I am grateful, endlessly so, but because you've become someone essential to me. Someone who sees me as a person rather than a crown. Someone I trust completely." She paused. "Is that what you want? Because if not, we can pretend this didn't happen. I won't make this an order. It has to be your choice." "It is my choice," Tomas said. "And yes, I want this. Want you. Even though it's complicated and probably breaks about 17 protocols and I have no idea what I'm doing with a queen." Sareth smiled despite her tears. "Neither do I, honestly, but I think we can figure it out together." Their relationship developed carefully after that, both aware of the complications. Sareth was recently widowed, still grieving her late husband even as she found new connection. Tomas was technically part of her household, creating power dynamic issues they had to navigate carefully. And there were political implications they couldn't ignore, though they tried to be discreet. But discretion in a palace full of observant staff was nearly impossible. Within 2 weeks, rumors were spreading about the queen's feelings for the human who saved her daughter. The reactions were mixed. Some found it romantic, the queen finding love again after tragedy. Others considered it scandalous, too soon after her husband's death. The conservative elements of court were horrified at the idea of their queen partnering with an alien, and a common one at that. Sareth's senior advisors requested private audiences to express concerns. They were polite but firm in their objections. The political implications, Your Majesty. The questions about proper mourning periods. The concerns about Mr. Chen's origins and status. Sareth listened to each objection with perfect regal composure, then delivered her response at a state function where the full court was assembled. She stood before her people, every inch the queen, and spoke with absolute authority. "I am aware of the concerns that have been raised regarding my personal life," she began, her voice carrying through the hall. "I will address them once and only once." She gestured to Tomas, who was standing uncomfortably in his assigned place among the household. "Tomas Chen saved my daughter's life when he could have fled to safety. By our ancient laws, he became part of our royal family through that act of extraordinary courage. I claimed him then as household member and under my protection. Now, I claim him fully as my consort and future partner. This is not a request for approval. This is a declaration of my intent as your queen. Anyone who questions my choice questions my authority." The hall went absolutely silent. Sareth continued, her voice softening slightly. "I have lost my husband, my children, nearly everything that mattered to me. What remains is my duty to Vaynar, my daughter who survived because of Mr. Chen's heroism, and the possibility of building something new from the ruins of tragedy. I choose to embrace that possibility. I choose Tomas Chen, freely and fully, and I will not debate this decision." The political establishment was shocked, but Sareth had played the situation perfectly. She had the legal right to choose her consort. Tomas was already technically part of the royal household, and most importantly, he was genuinely popular with the Vaynar people, who viewed him as a hero who'd risked his life to save their princess. After the formal announcement, Tomas found Sareth in her private chambers, both of them still processing what had just happened. "You just declared your intention to marry me in front of your entire court," Tomas said, still slightly stunned. "Did I mention I'm terrible at protocol and regularly embarrass myself in formal situations?" "Yes," Sareth said calmly. "You've mentioned that several times. I don't care." She moved to stand in front of him, taking both his hands. "I've spent my life meeting other people's expectations, Tomas, marrying for political alliance, behaving according to protocol, being the perfect queen. And then I lost almost everything, and all those rules and expectations seemed meaningless compared to the simple fact that my daughter was alive because someone acted with courage and compassion." She smiled. "You're imperfect by court standards. You use wrong verb forms and bow at inappropriate moments and have no idea how to navigate political intrigue. And you're exactly what I want. Someone genuine in a palace full of careful facades. Someone who sees me as Sareth, not just the queen. Someone I choose freely. I love you, Tomas Chen, and I would very much like you to be my partner and consort if you'll have me." Tomas pulled her close, everything that had been complicated suddenly feeling very simple. "I love you too. And yes, obviously yes. Though fair warning, I'm going to keep making protocol mistakes. Master Korvax might actually have a breakdown." Sareth laughed against his chest. "Master Korvax will adapt, as will everyone else." The story moves forward 2 years. Tomas and Sareth are formally married now, their partnership having overcome initial resistance to become accepted, even celebrated by most of Vaynar society. They represent resilience and renewal, proof that joy can be found even after devastating loss. Iana has thrived under their joint care, growing into a confident young woman who adores her mother and her uncle Tomas, who she still refuses to call by any more formal title. The throne room ceremony where Tomas is officially invested as royal consort is attended by dignitaries from across the sector. He stands beside Sareth, wearing formal robes that still feel absurd, but that he's learned to tolerate, and watches as the woman he loves addresses her people with strength and grace. Later in their private quarters, away from protocol and formality, Sareth leans against him with comfortable ease. "Do you ever regret it?" she asks quietly, running toward danger that day, ending up bound to a royal family you never intended to join. Tomas thinks about his life before Vanar, the rootless existence of moving from crisis to crisis, the loneliness he'd barely acknowledged. Then he thinks about Iana's laugh, the palace gardens where he and Sareth walk every evening, the sense of purpose and belonging he's found. "Not even once," he says honestly. "Best decision I ever made. Running toward the explosion, saving Iana, ending up here with you. All of it." Sareth smiles and kisses him gently. "You saved my daughter, Tomas Chen, and in saving her you saved me too. You gave me reasons to keep living when I wanted to surrender to grief. You belong to us now, you always will, and I would not have it any other way." The EMT who ran toward danger has become a prince consort, a stepfather and a partner to a queen. It's not the life he planned, but it's exactly the life he wants. Sometimes fate knows better than we do. Sometimes a single choice to help someone in need can bind two lives and two hearts forever.